President Zelensky has said that American and European security guarantees would be needed for Ukraine to hold elections, despite saying that legislation could be changed to permit a vote within 3 months. Well, the Ukrainian leader, who was elected in 2019, has remained in power beyond his 5-year term due to martial law being declared after Russia's full-scale invasion. President Zelensky's come under pressure from President Trump, who's been echoing the Russian viewpoint that a lack of elections means his country is not democratic. He's accused Kyiv of using war to avoid elections. Well, all of this is significant because it comes amid a flurry of diplomacy aimed at finding a peace deal. President Zelensky says he expects to send a revised proposal back to Washington within a day. On Tuesday, he continued his shuttle diplomacy to European capitals as he met Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. He also met Pope Leo, who warned that peace in Ukraine without Europe is unrealistic. All of this comes as President Trump railed against European leaders in an interview with Politico and said Russia's in a stronger negotiating position than Ukraine.
You know, sir, it's sometimes hard to tell when you say these things. Do you intend to send kind of a message of tough love to our allies to push them to make reforms? Or do you think that many of them are just weak and you don't really want to be allies with them?
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do. They want to be politically correct, and it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
Well, let's get more on that story by going to Kyiv and joining our reporter there, Joel Gunter. So, Joel, for the last few days, we've been talking about efforts to secure peace in Ukraine. Now the conversation's turned to elections. Just bring our viewers up to date on why this conversation's now about elections.
President Zelensky was taking questions last night in a Q&A from reporters, and during that Q&A, he said for the first time that he was willing for Ukraine to hold wartime elections. That is a change of tack. Ukraine's constitution essentially suspends any possibility of an election during martial law, which is obviously in place during the war. President Zelensky saying that last night did come as a little bit of a surprise. It comes in response to a couple of days of a very harsh criticism from President Trump, who gave an interview shortly before and implied Ukraine was no longer functioning as a democracy. So adding pressure there, saying that he believes Ukraine should hold elections. There are, as you mentioned, very significant issues and complexities around the idea of holding an election during wartime, not least that Ukraine is understood to have about 6 million people abroad. It has many, many thousands serving on the front line who would find it very difficult to vote. There isn't really, to be frank, much of a political or civil consensus here around the idea of holding an election before the war comes to an end. So this is being seen very much as a response to the remarks from President Trump.
Yeah, Joel, just seeing now from the Kremlin that they say that President Trump's statements on Ukraine are in line with Russia's view. Those statements will, of course, worry Ukraine because there is a sense that Ukraine's position's not being fully heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been speaking to Ukrainian MPs this morning about these proposals. One of them told me that the idea of holding a national election while the war is ongoing plays directly into Putin's hands. An election campaign could be divisive. It would disrupt the war effort on the front line. The concern, as the concern has been for a couple of weeks now around some of the points in this draft proposal, is that some of these proposals are playing into Putin's hands. There is a concern about a divergence between Trump and the US administration and Ukraine's European allies. There's a concern here about how much influence those European powers are able to have on this peace process as it moves along. And there is a real concern that President Trump and the US are pushing Ukraine and pushing the peace process in a direction significantly more favorable to Russia than it is to Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Joel Gunter in Kyiv, for the latest from there.